Hello, everyone, and welcome for joining this customer AMA session, protecting your greatest asset, your people, from opportunistic attackers. It's great to see from the registrations and the people on the line, so many of you that I've worked with, and we've worked with at Tessian in one place. I'm very excited for this discussion, this open Q&A session. For those that don't know myself, I'm Kai Thomas. I'm Customer Success Manager here at Tessian, helping to spearhead the support we provide to our legal firms globally. And there are a small handful of you on the call that might not be as familiar with Tessian. For those people, we build technology to empower people to work safely without security getting in their way. So the three key risks we solve for are accidental data loss, data exfiltration, and then the final risk, which we'll be discussing today, is inbound impersonations and spear phishing in particular. So what can you guys expect to get out of today's session? Today, I'm very excited to be joined by two people who have been long-standing Tessian customers, and two people I've worked with for just over a year and a half now. Ned Stevanovsky, Head of IT Operations and CISO at Mishcon de Reya, and David Thomas, Head of IT at Steams & Bolton. So they're joining me today. It's great to have you on the call, guys. How are we doing?
Good, thank you.
Good, thank you, Kai.
Brilliant. So Ned and David will be joining us to share their experience of cybersecurity in the legal IT space. We'll spend the first 20 minutes of the call going through their experience and their involvement of Tessian and their recent adoption of Defender specifically. Because we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, our latest product, Defender, has had some pretty impressive results at both Mishcon and Steams & Bolton. So they're looking forward to sharing a bit of that with you. And Ned has actually agreed to share Mishcon's dashboard with you, showing their results. So thanks again, Ned, for agreeing to that. The last 20-25 minutes will then be a Q&A. So I really want to see some questions in here. I've already got a number of questions from the people who've registered, who are interested in hearing from Ned and David. So I've got some to hand, but by all means, feel free to ping us some questions and we will try and get through those. The three buckets of questions I want to cover are: one, how cybersecurity has changed, especially given COVID, and how priorities have changed within legal IT. The second is how to raise cybersecurity to your board and make it a front of mind a topic, which it naturally already is moving towards. And then the last is the future and where I should be thinking proactively about budgets. So if you can see your Q&A widget at the bottom, feel free to share some questions with us as and when we're speaking, and we'll try and answer those as we can. Now, without further ado, great to introduce Ned and David. It would be great to start with yourself, Ned. Would you mind just giving a brief overview of your experience and your involvement with security over the years?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ned Stevanovsky, Head of IT Operations and Security for Mishcon de Reya Group. Mishcon de Reya Group is a group of companies that include Mishcon de Reya LP, the legal entity, MDR Private, which is the financial services firm. We have a cybersecurity firm, e-discovery firm, and lastly, brand management firm. I'm responsible for the technology stack across the group and have been with Mishcon for the last 10 years. One of our priorities, major priorities for the last few years, has been focusing on our 10-year strategy, which is based on technology to improve the services that we deliver to our clients and also to enhance the experience for our end users. And major part of this is ensuring that we have the security controls in place to protect our client data. Tessian has been in place for the last few years and has been an effective control in place to ensure that we reduce the number of phishing emails that we get. We'll cover more in the coming questions, and I'm happy to answer if you have any questions. Thank you.
Cheers, Ned. And same for yourself, David. A brief overview. And I did notice in your bio your involvement with the Wimbledon, and I'm a big tennis fan, so your IT experience does span a number of years, doesn't it?
Yeah, a number of people ask me, what are you doing working in legal IT when you used to work at live events like Wimbledon and the Open Golf? It was a very stressful point in my life. Lots of big events and long hours, but leading edge technology for the time. We're going back to about 2003, 2004, where we were streaming live video from these sporting events and encoding them and presenting them to the partner companies that we used, like Real Networks, if anyone can remember them, and AOL, so that our American friends across the pond could watch Wimbledon on the slide while they were at work on their web browsers. But yeah, I came back to legal IT 2005, 6, 7 thereabouts, and have been with Stevens and Bolton since about 2009. We're a single site organization. We went the opposite route. We kind of consolidated multiple branches into a larger head office in Guildford, which is about 40 minutes outside London, on the fast train, an hour on the slow train. I think, like many firms, started to look at products like Tessian when GDPR appeared on the horizon. In those days, we hadn't even established a compliance team, but so we signed up with Tessian to look at the inbound stuff in about March 2008. That's when the journey started there. As Ned said, we'll circle back around to talk a bit more specifically about Defender. But we signed up with Defender in about 2018. And at that point, it was a fairly straightforward decision for us. So I should have mentioned, I think, we're about 250 people in a single site. So probably not the same kind of complex challenges that larger firms like Ned's firm face in being multi-site. But of course, when COVID lockdown happened, we very quickly had to respond to that and found ourselves very quickly with 249 remote offices. So yeah, interesting few months for a lot of people, as I know, but we can circle back around to the specifics.
Brilliant. Cheers, guys. Yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy few months, and the word unprecedented has been used too many times. So, and I said I wouldn't use it, but I just did. So we'll circle back around to kind of how you've transitioned really as companies, and touch wood, the hundreds of law firms I personally work with have transitioned well, and the only real pain points have been additional laptops or people sending stuff home. However, it would be good to hear from you later on, especially in the open Q&A, what priorities have changed. Coming back to yourself, Ned, you mentioned there's a 10-year strategy, which is a pretty long time to be thinking ahead that far. When you got involved with Tessian as a product, we didn't have Defender. I'd be interested to know what your initial purchase was. David mentioned theirs was a GDPR-driven purchase, but was yours similar?
Yeah, to a degree, yes. Obviously, GDPR was on the horizon, but at the same time, I think we were seeing an increase in phishing emails, and we were seeing, and also the risk of data leakage. So the first purchase was around protecting misaddressed emails. That was an issue for us, and Tessian's product fitted well in that space, and immediately we've seen the results. I think the return on investment was in the first few months. Literally. But moving on from that, obviously GDPR came in place, and we had to have a product in place to ensure that we stopped any misaddressed emails and we comply with GDPR. Yeah,
brilliant. And David, there's a number of people on the call with very similar roles to both of you guys. What exposure has Tessian had within the business at Stevens and Bolton, just to almost lay the groundwork in terms of how Tessian works and who is responsible for it within S&B?
Yeah, so when we started the journey, we had one compliance person, the head of compliance, if you like, who became our DPO, and the relationship initially with Tessian was mainly driven by myself and working with this person, and we've since established a a larger compliance team dealing with a lot more. But they've taken responsibility for what I like to think of as the outbound Tessian functionality, which is the IP loss piece. When we brought that in, it proved especially useful around IP loss. We were able to, on one specific example, engage with someone who had decided to leave, someone senior, and Tessian picked up some of the behavior of this person and flagged it, and it was escalated to the managing partner. They had a friendly chat, and there was an amicable kind of exit. So we from a kind of a human perspective benefited, instantly from it. When we rolled it out to the business, as I'm sure most people on this call have already done if they're existing customers for the outbound stuff, we kind of sold it as a product that would kind of help protect the business, and it was a small Outlook add-in. And I have to say, my experience and the history of Outlook add-ins in law firms, I'm going back a few years, was pretty dire. The work shares and the managers of this world, they tended to not like each other when they were add-ins in Outlook, but we've never had any issues, touch wood, with the Tessian add-in. So, yeah, we kind of sold it as something that was just going to strengthen the firm's kind of ability to protect itself from accidents, not a big brother was spying on you. And it was a fairly quiet, soft launch, and we did most of that through an initial email announcement and then subsequent updates via the intranet for people who want to know more about it, to learn more about it. But it was really quite nice to be able to set it on in an X-ray mode to see what the impact might be, and then to flip to live when we were happy after a proof of concept.
Good to hear. And I was going to ask you this in the Q&A later, because a number of clients have actually asked me this in the past, and someone before registering asked if this would be a topic. And David, to your point about yourself driving the Tessian ship internally initially, but now there being a number of stakeholders, do you have any tips on making sure that compliance are invested for certain elements of the platform, the IP loss, whereas the security element, which we're going to touch on in a sec with Defender, is more IT and security focused?
Yes. So in my mind, it helps to split outbound from inbound being Defender. The best tip I can give anyone on the call who's facing a similar situation is get help from your account manager at Tessian. So we introduced Kai to the new head of compliance who joined us, and one of the members of the team, and working with kind of almost in tandem with Kai, we explained the product and the difference between the two modules, and how we wanted the compliance team to be able to have visibility and to be able to manage that, but also to have a relationship with Tessian directly, because there's a lot of value in what you bring, Kai, bigging you up here for a sec. You're very proactive. You invite us to meetings. You help us review the data. And I think busy IT teams like mine really appreciate that in a partner, because we tend to focus on the next priority. We tend to move on to the next big thing, and we often end up maybe neglecting the proactive approach to some of these products. So I think the Tessian relationship is the only one that I can think of off the top of my head where we have a vendor that is dealing with two teams in the firm, IT and compliance, and it works really quite seamlessly. But I think that's a lot of that's to do with the proactive account management.
Great to hear. Didn't expect
I'll be taking brown envelope payments later on, Kai.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting point, because as Tessian, we're obsessive about our customers, but of course, with the growing challenges of any business, it's sometimes a challenge to make sure that we are still concentrating on being there for the customer throughout. So I really appreciate that as a point, David. So now the key thing I wanted to discuss really, and the reason you guys are so important to this call, is that Defender is our latest product. It was about 3 or 4 years of engineering work before we launched Defender. For those that aren't aware, I'll give a very quick summary. But yeah, Defender was our latest product, and we actually flipped the algorithm on its head almost to protect against inbound threats. We were very much a data protection company from an outbound perspective. And the reason it was built off the back of quite considerable amount of investment was that we saw a problem in the market, and our clients saw a big problem in the market, in that everyone was using a secure email gateway of some sort, a Mimecast or a Proofpoint or Symantec, which did effectively stop the bulk of attacks and some weak form impersonation. So maybe 85% of stuff was being stopped effectively. I used to be a procurement manager. I onboarded Mimecast into that job, so I can't, speak badly of them. They're a very, very good company. That being said, for the sophisticated criminals out there who are constantly getting smarter, they were able to understand how a rule-based system like Mimecast works. And if you know how to bypass the rules, then a very crafty email does get through. And we saw that there was a lot of IT and security teams scratching their heads saying, how do we keep configuring this tool to block what we don't want to come in, but also allow the stuff we do? And I was speaking to so many people who were saying, it's a full-time job for someone to go in and release legitimate emails and vice versa. So that was the problem area, really. And our engineers used the same relationship intelligence to understand what normal looks like for your people. So at Stevens & Bolton and Mishcon, we understand your people and who they email and who emails them. In doing so, we know what normal looks like. And because we know what normal looks like, we also know what abnormal looks like. So we can say in real time, this isn't who they say they are. We give a contextual warning. I've put this as an example, but the contextual warning is something we didn't quite expect to be such a hit. But essentially, from a cyber awareness perspective, Ned, we were speaking before the call started about the educational real-time element of Defender being so specific and real to the end user that it's now the most effective way. And the movement a lot of markets are making is towards real-time alerts rather than just relying on simulations and out-of-the-box training. So I'd be keen to hear from yourself, Ned. I know we had a few discussions before you switched Defender on, but your stack at the time, what did you see were the gaps? You had Mimecast and you were sending simulations, but what was it that was still getting through?
I think you've covered it in a way. Essentially, we've had Mimecast at that time, and still it was blocking like 85, almost 90% of the emails, but 10% of the emails were still coming through, and 10% on a normal day is actually quite a high number. And there was a gap. We needed something else, additional layer that we can actually detect and protect and alert our user base. So this is where Tessian Defender fitted in. And generally, it's not just about the technology stack, it's also about the user adoption. So this is where we coupled the deployment of the technology with user education. Hence, the actual adoption rate is higher, and our users are now almost used to seeing the alerts, and they interact with alerts on a daily basis. For us, the comprehensive security is about a multi-layered approach, number of technologies in place to ensure that we detect and protect, but at the same time, it's about user education and awareness.
Really good. Thanks for sharing that, Ned. Yes, I also from speaking before the call for everyone else's awareness, you guys have now put an additional layer in. A checkpoint cloud guard. So it'd be good to share what your thought process was behind that in terms of the multi-layered approach and why you needed checkpoint as well.
So checkpoint cloud guard comes from our view that we want to simplify our technology stack. We want to simplify the number of solutions that we have, because for every solution that you put in place, you need a person behind it to manage it. And like David said earlier, our team's already stretched. Adding systems and systems and systems from multiple vendors you need to multiply your team members. And from that perspective, we decided to simplify, and we decided to go for Checkpoint Infinity platform, which gives us access to all their cloud technologies and protections. CloudGuard provides other functionality, but one of them is actually plugging into Office 365 and scanning our emails. So this is where we're looking to further filter any emails before they reach our end users. So from our technology stack, emails come through Mimecast, gets filtered, goes to CloudGuard, Office 365, on DMARC, and then at the end is the Tessian.
Brilliant. And David, our initial conversations around Defender, I remember coming to Guildford and sitting with you and talking through your own stack. You were sending simulations via Blockfish, as well as having Mimecast TTP in place. But what was the key differentiator for Defender throughout those discussions?
Yeah, your use of the word simulations throws me. We call them ethical phishing campaigns, but I think I prefer simulations. Yeah, we were in a very happy place with Tessian in 2018 when you approached us and explained that you'd turned it on its head, and using all of that rich information that you'd built up over time in your machine learning algorithm about the relationships of our people and our clients and who we email. So it made absolute sense to me how you could leverage that. And we were so happy with the product that it made total sense. I think we were also facing what a lot of people here will know, the more sophisticated kind of malicious players getting very good at creating convincing impersonation, spoofing emails, minus the historic bad grammar and spelling mistakes. And as Ned mentioned, I think I call it the Mimecast vulnerability gap, that kind of 15-10% of email that makes it through. And I needed to sleep better at night. So when you came along and mentioned Defender, I was very, very interested, and I think it was fortuitous timing. I'm sure there are probably other Mimecast customers here who share my frustration that features in their product like impersonation protection, although they can be very effective, they do generate quite a bit of false positive noise. And it requires someone from our help desk team to whitelist an email address. If it's reported, the end users can't really tackle that. So I loved in Defender, when I saw it, I loved that header or banner on top of the email that puts everything in human speak, as I call it, which shows you the email was from this person to that person. We think it's suspicious for this or that reason. It really, for a lawyer, a non-technical, in other words, a non-IT technical, technology-savvy lawyer, they can read that. They like reading paragraphs, and it's very well laid out with two easy choices. Which I think most people know, but report as suspicious and delete, or mark as safe. And again, we ran a very quiet behind-the-scenes proof of concept, and then we notified the business that we were turning this on as an extra layer of detection and protection in Microsoft Outlook. Explained that it uses machine learning. I think impressed people, and also explained that we were going to roll the iPhone version out over the coming months, because we like we like phased deployment so that we don't overload our end users. Yeah. But yeah, I think it was just one of those no-brainer moments for me. And then you have to talk about what's it going to cost. And fortunately, fortunately that was a good conversation. Yeah.
You basically answered my next question that sprung to mind there, but speaking to a number of people within legal IT recently about Defender and this approach to putting the control in the end user's hands by allowing them to mark it as safe or as malicious once they read the contextual message. You didn't have much pushback, I remember, when you both adopted Defender, but what tips would you have for people who might be hesitant to put the warning and the control in the end user's hands?
Shall I go first, Ned?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think as with all these things, people, lawyers are intelligent, qualified, educated, people. They hear about these things. In fact, our managing partner attended one of these man in the middle attack demonstrations, and that was really effective in making the firm and the management board aware of kind of cyber threat. And that's why a few years ago that became front and center, I'm sure, in most law firms. But the kind of proof of concept approach, where you can turn the feature on, you can report on it, you can see in your live environment what would have happened. I think that is great to be able to test it and make people feel, stakeholders, not necessarily end users, but stakeholders feel comfortable that it's not going to disrupt people's lives, because email is such a key part of what our people do and how they communicate. So it was really quite low impact for us. And when it was enabled, we didn't even see a ripple through the firm. We had 0 complaints.
Amazing to hear. Yeah, Ned, I'm actually going to flick to the next screen to help as a talking point, because this will move us swiftly on to a dashboard that I've been excited to share with the audience. But Ned, as a talking point, the 2 graphs at the bottom show that Mishcon have interacted, or Mishcon staff have interacted far higher than we see across our network. So I wanted to show this to the audience before you answer about your approach to allowing people to take control and click the buttons.
So from our perspective, no pushback from the end users, because this aids them. This actually helps their day. They don't have to look hard for any telltale signs in emails. They actually can rely, and often this is quite good at spotting phishing emails. So in a way, it was a good addition to our user base. When it comes to the screenshot that we are sharing, the dashboard, you'll probably see that the adoption rate is slightly higher than the Tessian network, and that's because we spent the last 2 years around educating our user base around spotting phishing emails, around using the product and what it means and how they can benefit from it. And this has resulted in high adoption rate and better understanding of what phishing emails are and how they can be disruptive for their day-to-day work. As you can see from the statistics, the Tessian platform still picks up, even though it goes through a number of layers, number of controls in place, still picks up a number of malicious emails detected. And especially in this screenshot, you can see there's 86 malicious emails detected for the time period. The last thing to add really is that we've been using it for the last 2 years, and it will continue to be our platform of choice for detecting phishing emails.
Cheers, Ned. Yeah, so just to clarify on the numbers, actually, this is the new HLSI dashboard for those that haven't seen the new HLSI platform that Tessian developed in the last few months. At the top, you can see total malicious emails marked as malicious by the end user, total deleted, because a lot of people might delete manually after they see the Tessian banner. So this kind of next level insight and analysis that we're rolling out to clients has been really, really well adopted. But I'm keen to hear, Ned, are you using much of this cyber analysis, whether it's Tessian or more broadly with your different tiers, with the board, and what interest do they have?
So we do to a level to identify if we are being targeted specifically for us. So we do the analysis, and then we do a summary report for the board as to how many we've detected. Are there any unusual phishing campaigns that we need to investigate further?
Yeah. And the same for yourself, David. I remember speaking with yourself, your managing partner, we had a number of people in the room. Clearly, the discussion about getting Defender in place and wider security strategies is at board level, and they've shown a keen interest. Does that continue to change, especially with COVID recently? Are you badgered for answers and questions constantly to keep staff safe?
You know, the opposite, if I'm brutally honest. Management board, managing partner are really concerned with running the business. I'm not getting questions on how secure are we. I think that's probably a good sign. They trust that we're doing the best we can. We do report back, and a little bit like Ned, we tend to highlight the exceptions, I suppose, because we expect kind of a daily and a weekly certain number of attempts as normal. We're seeing these things blocked. We're seeing our defenses kind of doing their jobs. It's every now and then when you have the sense that you're being targeted that you should sit up and take note. But we've got, as Ned mentioned, we use a company called Blockfish. We do ethical phishing campaigns. We educate. There's awareness. We have induction videos that our new joiners watch, which are mandatory. So, my view will always be that the human is the weakest link, and that's where you have to focus your energy. I love solutions that are set it and forget it. And to some extent, that's what we have with Defender, but and I suppose with the other modules. But you do have to have somebody who is keeping an eye on things and checking things and strengthening your defenses. I'll give you one quick example, I suppose, where we actually didn't have Defender in place. And I won't say too much, but it was a number of years ago. We had a client in Ireland who, for some reason, had decided to base his corporate email in a local Irish ISP who was hosting his email. And he was an avid cyclist. He used to go to the Alps and cycle all the time. And a gang of Nigerian hackers, we know this because we found out later, they were based in London, and the Met swooped on them. But they managed to hack his account. They got him to click a link. He had no two-factor authentication wrapped around it, and they managed to very convincingly speak to one of our partners who dealt with that client and convince him that it was the client. And when he tried to follow our process to release money that was being held for that client on account, when he challenged the client and said, look, we need to give you a phone call on the normal numbers we have for you to confirm this is you, the hackers actually used the knowledge they'd gained from his mailbox to say, no, I'm cycling in the Alps. There's no way you can reach me. This is urgent. I need you to buy shares with that money you hold for me. And it was all done on email. There was no breach on our side. But if Tessian was in place, I'm convinced that human layer, that kind of header at the top of the email that explains that there's something fishy and suspicious about this, would have given that partner the confidence to act more quickly and respond with more confidence to the hackers, or at least to flag it earlier with the IT team. So, fortunately, bullet dodged. But since Defender has gone in, I know that we're now protected by that kind of scenario. And if while I have the mic, if I may say one more thing, the kind of penny drop moment for me when we were looking at Defender was the ability, which I don't think Mimecast or any of the others can do, but they may now be able to do this, is to look deep in the metadata at the sender's SMTP IP address, the service that's delivering that email at the point of send, and to track that over time. And if that changes, can flag it as suspicious. So for kind of email spoofing, complex advanced spoofing, that's for me a unique selling point. So I was quite impressed by that.
It's actually the example I put up here, David, is relating to that, whereby this training is absolutely critical, but because criminals have now understood how to tweak the header of an email, make the email look identical to the person they're impersonating, so it's a direct spoof with no characters difference. It's almost invisible to the end user to be able to spot that, and you can't rely on them to spot those. So as you said with that example, the Tessian metadata is able to say, hang on a minute, this is coming from a brand new IP address we've never seen from your managing partner or from another supplier of yours. So yeah, cheers for sharing that one.
Absolutely, and I think they may be few and far between, but you only need one, right? And it's a comfort knowing that that's buried in your product. Yeah.
It was also an interesting point. You mentioned you have compulsory training for your new joiners. For both of you, how much do you think the training of cybersecurity is changing now that we have, real-time alerts with Tessian? You have a number of different stacks. You also have your simulations or your ethical training, David. Do you think the compulsory training, where you pull people aside once a quarter or once a year, is still as relevant? And I'll start with you, Ned.
I do, because everyone's busy, and it's very difficult to find the time to allocate time to do further training. So making it compulsory at least once a year ensures that everyone can do the refresher training and be up to date with latest phishing scams and simulations. So I think it's very important for the organization. I do also agree that there are other ways for raising awareness, and it's not just the compulsory training, but I think it plays a part in effective cybersecurity training.
I would totally agree. One example jumps to mind of a secretary that joined us from another law firm who tried to argue that she'd had cybersecurity training within the last 2 years, and wasn't very happy when we made her go through our training. But she came back to me afterwards and said how she had learned a lot from the training. And I think this is one of the things that may or may not differentiate us. But when we train people on cybersecurity, we also focus on their home environment. It's not just about what you do in your corporate environment that can compromise you. And often with LinkedIn profiles and lawyers being visible on most of the corporate law firm websites that I visit, people, we advertise our lawyers as our assets. They can quite easily be targeted, linked back to their LinkedIn and even through to Facebook and other platforms. And then people can try, the personal approach or that personal vector as a backdoor. So, we try and give them a little bit more value in the training as well to help them protect their personal life. Then it takes on a little bit more value for them, and it makes a little bit more sense to them as well. But we force everyone through training once a year. Yeah.
The interesting point you make there, David, was the element you help people with, their home training. And I was speaking to Mark Parr, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing this because he spoke at a recent Tessian event of ours. Mark Parr, CIO of HFW, he said a tip for getting people he's worked with to adopt cyber awareness and cyber education is to put themselves into a mindset of putting security into their own home. So it's changing passwords on their home laptop or the security of their home router. And once they have that mindset at home, he said they then are much more likely to bring it to the workplace. Keen to get your thoughts on that in terms of if you have any other tips and have you heard that one before?
I think I'll go first, Ned, if that's okay. But we are fortunate enough that we're not massive, and of the 250 users, we probably have about 150 lawyers. And as part of the help desk service that we offer, especially during lockdown, we're offering additional services to help improve, people's home broadband router security. Help them reset their passwords away from the defaults. Although most ISPs like Virgin and BT are getting better at doing non-standard passwords on these devices and things. So we do also help with personal advice on personal home setup and kit and that sort of stuff. So I absolutely believe in educating people, teaching people to fish so that they can kind of look after themselves better, and it does trickle back into the business. So we're doing that. Yeah.
There was another webinar the other day, actually, with another Mishcon representative, Joe Hancock, and I remember there was a discussion around teaching people about cyber awareness by showing them, as you said, David, how to formulate a phishing attack and just giving them a bit more in-depth knowledge of what a criminal goes through to get them a bit more bought in and interested. And then in doing that, I remember the hacker and the individual who was on the call sharing this story said that suddenly they start to see the problem in a different way to identify these threats. Ned, I know you work with Joe, but is that something you've considered? Is it part of your training to bring them closer into how hackers go about?
I mean, moving obviously to a home working environment has slightly different challenges, and everything that David said makes sense. We extended a bit further to even advising our users, for example, not to have confidential meetings in a room where there's personal assistants like Alexa, like anything else that can listen, because most of those services will actually do the listening and transcription back in the States. And as you know, we have an issue with those services. So therefore, it's really important to ensure that data privacy stays there. So if it's a confidential call, it's within a room where there are no personal assistants listening. Second one is, again, around people who print at home. What do you do with the printing? Again, it's general awareness to ensure that that's always locked away and it's not accessible, and shredding and everything else. So working from home has its own challenges, not just about training, it's about everything else. A full awareness on their home setup, on their home Wi-Fi, even down to, it's a challenge even for IT teams. How do you patch every endpoint when most laptops are turned off after 5:30? How do you ensure that you're always up to date? It was quite easy in the office. Everything was online. You can do it during the night. When everyone's at home, it's a challenge, but you still need to do it on a monthly basis. So it comes with challenges, but we just have to keep on going and find a way to make it work.
Very interesting. I just noticed we've got 5 minutes left, and the last 10 minutes we've actually covered a number of the key questions coming through in terms of how you manage Tessian from a compliance and IT perspective. The one question I had, and that I'm sure the audience would be interested in, there was one about the future of cybersecurity within legal. Ned, coming back to you, because you have a cyber arm within Mishcon, and I know you're involved with CTIF and Legal IT Awards, and you've got the network of CIOs. What do you foresee being the next wave of threat beyond spear phishing within the cyberspace? Is there anything that is front of mind that people are starting to have conversations about?
I think what we currently see on the market will explode, because cyber criminals will already know that it's all about the finance. They're financially motivated. The amount of money generated by cybercrime nowadays, I think, it surpasses the amount generated from cocaine in the world. So that's a big thing. We've already seen the number of companies have actually paid out the ransomware. So cyber criminals already know that the money and the value is in the data. So I think the critical aspect from our perspective, it's all about protecting the data, protecting the systems, because that's where the focus will be in the years to come.
And David, same question for you, really. Are you proactively looking out for new tech to solve for additional problems going forward, or is it more about the here and now with COVID and thinking a bit more short term?
I agree with everything Ned just said, and was quite surprised by the cocaine reference. That's a huge amount of money globally, I'm sure. Look, I think I'm quite a pragmatic person. I think it's keeping an eye on emerging threats. I think ransomware scares me quite a bit. I'd like to see what kind of platforms, how they improve to block and spot ransomware. Touch wood, we haven't seen that yet. I've seen that in personally through family members. And that's something that doesn't keep me awake at night. But we do think about. We have relationships with threat analysts that we can escalate to, external experts. These people are kind of ethical hackers themselves. They monitor our systems 24/7 using a SIEM platform. It's a proactive threat hunting service. So if something emerges 1 week, they will be updating our monitoring platform to look for those threats as well. But I think it's just common sense, and especially, yeah.
Sorry, David, I've just noticed we've got a few seconds left, so I wanted to wrap up. I mean, both your thoughts on the Last
point. With everyone moving to cloud, two-factor authentication, everything, wrap around it.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening in. Hope that was really useful. We also have an event on 9th of September. It's great to have you again. Thanks both for joining. Really, really useful conversation. Ned, enjoy the rest of your trip in Croatia. David, I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Take care.
And thank you everyone again for listening and joining us. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. All right.